We'll say good morning. Yep, good morning to JP Morosi with us to talk about the Cubs, their re-pursuit of Cody Bellinger, why the holdup, and who they've signed in the interim. JP, good morning.
Matt and Bill, good morning. Yes, it's been a busy, newsy week in Mesa, Arizona for the Chicago Cubs. Let's start with Bellinger in the comments from Tom Ricketts and Dansby Swanson as well. There does appear to be a stalemate between Bellinger's camp and the Cubs about a possible reunion. As I look at the market and speak with people around the industry, I'm hard-pressed to identify a team that is a better fit for Bellinger, still now, than the Cubs are. They are still the best fit for Cody Bellinger. I'm not sure that he's going to ultimately land there because the staring contest has been going on for months, quite literally. And he is, as you see it there, he was a tremendous fit with the Cubs last year. He's a dynamic defender in multiple positions. We know all these things to be true. But here we are now in the second half of February, and if a Cubs fan or a fan of any other team was hoping to see a real break in the stalemate, I'm here to report it has not happened yet. Now, we have seen in the past Scott Boras clients, whether it's Harper or others, sign deeper into spring training. And I do believe that Bellinger probably could get ready for opening day with just a couple weeks of at-bats, given what he's already doing right now to warm up in the offseason. So this is not as if it's an urgent situation today for him to sign. But you start looking at the landscape, and I'm just not sure that the other teams that have been mentioned during the course of the offseason are better fits right now than the Cubs would be. The Giants were mentioned early. Well, they signed Jung-Hoo Lee. The Yankees were mentioned early. Well, they've got Juan Soto, all these different outfielders. I'm just not seeing a fit, Matt and Bill, that exists out there that's better than what the Cubs would offer. And the Cubs, notably, as you alluded to, Matt, they made a couple additions in recent days of the minor league contract, non-roster invite to spring training category. A couple names that we know well. David Peralta, Dominic Smith. They have both now joined the Cubs organization. Peralta on a minor league deal with a major league invite. He played for the Dodgers last year and I think was a pretty impactful player in a limited role as a reserve type outfielder, which Peralta could certainly do for the Cubs as well. And Dominic Smith, he had a hamate surgery in the course of the offseason, as Robert Murray has reported, and he may not be a full participant right now in the case of Dominic Smith, but expected to be good to go by the time you get to around opening day. So in both of these cases, interestingly enough, you think about the two positions that Bellinger plays, outfield and first base. Yep. Peralta's an outfielder. Smith is a first baseman. He can also play the outfield, of course, a little bit as well. But they almost have now positioned themselves, Matt and Bill, as having some support and depth and insurance against Bellinger not coming back. And if anything, the additions of Peralta and Smith have improved the Cubs' negotiating leverage with respect to Bellinger because they can say, well, we've got depth already. We don't need to run out and sign you right now because we have players that we trust and believe can help us in 2024.
Yeah, it sure feels like that. I don't think the Bellinger camp is going to listen to that narrative, but I do agree with what you're saying, and it's going to be interesting to watch what happens here if only there was a mystery team. Such things have been discussed in the past, and I'm sure, we might be hearing about that at some point. Let's talk about a remaining free agent whose still availability is perhaps even more mysterious to me.
This is a high-end all-star pitcher.
Yes, that high-end all-star pitcher that Harold's referring to is one Jordan Montgomery. If ever worlds had aligned perfectly for him to break the bank, it would be right now. Every former employer speaks glowingly of him. He dominated in the postseason. Every trade deadline when he switches uniforms, he goes on a big run. What's the holdup for signing this cat?
Great question, and certainly you could ask the same about Blake Snell, as we talked about on the show yesterday. I'm not sure right now, based on where the Yankees are with their luxury tax, that they are the natural fit, honestly, for either Montgomery or Snell. They're so close to those big penalties that I'm just not sure that that's the most likely outcome. What I would do is draw our attention westward to the team that you talked about off the top of the show, and that being the Angels. And whether it's Montgomery or Snell, if they're serious about contending this year, and I appreciated Mike Trout's comments about wanting to stay there and wanting to commit and be loyal to the Angels, he also talked about in that same press conference his desire for the Angels to sign one more big free agent. And when you look at the landscape of that roster, I would actually say that pitching could be the focus there. If they're going to make one more addition that would really impactfully improve their chances to compete in the American League West, it would be on the pitching side and not for a position player. So at some point in time, does the asking price for Montgomery or Snell come down to a level where the Angels can engage? Perhaps. And that to me is exactly what Mike Trout talked about yesterday and where I see the most natural fit. Because let's think for a moment about the American League West and the competition the Angels face in that division. We know the Rangers have basically said we're effectively tapped out, probably not going to be able to spend any more on significant free agents right now. And yet look at their rotation. Scherzer is not ready right now. DeGrom is not ready right now. Mahle is not ready right now. Look at the Astros. McCullers is more of an after the All-Star break conversation. Luis Garcia, same thing. Verlander, a little bit of a setback in his spring routine. So if there's an advantage for the Angels to capitalize on, it is getting stronger and healthier in the rotation than their chief competition in the American League West. And for that reason, I'm keeping a close eye on them as a possible landing spot for Snell or Montgomery.
All right, and I love that idea, but Sandoval, Detmers, Anderson, you're going to add another left-hander to this rotation? This could become the most left-handed rotation in the history of the American League West, which, again, if you're adding quality like those two guys, you make it work. Right. I just think it's an interesting consideration, but, boy, I love the idea of one of those guys headed to the Big A. What do you got?
Well, I was actually thinking if you had one, I almost think you're still treading water if you're the Angels. And I was going to ask JP, you know the landscape and you're talking about the penalties for money and everything else. I'd say why not both of them and throw out all left-handers to start the year right there, because to me, those two pitchers, we just saw Blake Snell win a Cy Young. We just saw Jordan Montgomery go through the playoffs and win a world championship with Texas. They don't matter left, right, or both when you're in that mix right there, because I would take those. But there's no way in the world that could ever come into play, could it?
Yeah, how about you sign those guys and Hyun Jin Ryu and have an all left-handed starting
fake news.
That is fake news. It's not going to happen.
Come on, man.
Because we know Hyun Jin Ryu is headed elsewhere, JP. Tell us about that.
Right. It's very interesting news that broke overnight. My friend Ji-ho Yoo, one of the great writers and reporters of Korean baseball, news breaking overnight that actually Hyun Jin Ryu is close and indeed finalizing an agreement to return to the Hanwha Eagles of KBO. This was his original organization that he pitched for before he came over to the Los Angeles Dodgers. And it appears right now that Ryu, Scott Boras' client, is going to be returning to the Hanwha Eagles of KBO. Of course, a lot of excitement. It's a month from today, in fact, that Ryu's original MLB employer, the Dodgers, are going to play the Padres in the Seoul series at the Gochok Sky Dome in Seoul. Look at his career. You could argue that when you consider the overall impact of Korean pitchers in Major League Baseball, that Hyun Jin Ryu is perhaps second only to Chan-ho Park, who in a lot of ways was a trailblazer for Korean players coming over to Major League Baseball, that Mount Rushmore of Korean pitchers in North America begins with Chan-ho Park and Hyun Jin Ryu. That those two are the greatest to ever do it here in MLB. And it's a great story, I think, for Hyun Jin Ryu. You get a chance to go back and finish your career in Korea. Masahiro Tanaka has done that in NPB. And notably, speaking of great and notable MLB players who are playing in KBO, playing this year in his final professional season, still going at it, Shin-Soo Choo is actually still playing in KBO this year. So what a great way for Shin-Soo Choo to finish out his career. And by all accounts, Hyun Jin Ryu taking the same approach, going back to KBO.
Boy, a lot of players going back to Korea, and it just kind of changes Harold's plans to become bilingual.
I want him to get into Loretta Stone.
Loretta Stone. All those Loretta Stone tapes that he purchased, he's going to have to return now because a lot of those guys are going back home. All right.
Just hit on real quick what JP just said. How cool is that for Ryu? He spent 10 years in the big leagues.
Yeah.
He threw up a 3.27 earning, made a boatload of money. He's going to go back to create and be larger than life.
Like what Tanaka did, right? Didn't Tanaka go back and pitch in Japan after dominating
Correct.
here?
Yeah.
Exactly right. And even I would, one more name that of the ultimate respected players in our game for a long time as well, Hiroki Kuroda did the same thing going back to Japan. So it's interesting for them. They can obviously represent their country internationally as well, maybe the Premier 12 later on this season. So a lot of good things ahead for Hyun Jin.
Good stuff. JP, thanks.